All right. We are live. Day 2 of the college basketball season. Day 2 of Vince Eric's Hoops. Hunter and I were on here yesterday talking major conference basketball, talking about some of the national storylines, but we had to get Matt Gannon on here, a man who, in my opinion, knows as much about mid-major basketball as anybody that I personally know or maybe even see on social media. Also, obviously, a big golf fan. We'll talk a little bit of golf at the end because anytime Matt and I get together, we've got to talk a little golf. Hunter with us as well again, but Matt, great to see you.
Yes, thank you guys for having me. I know we talked a lot about the hoops action in the preseason, and it's here. We're day 2 now, and never a bad time to talk mid-major hoops. I live college basketball. It is a beautiful sight. So happy it's back, and thank you guys for having me on. Ready to rock.
Absolutely. And Hunter, how are we doing? You've got the Husky flag there again. Washington does pick up a nice victory last night, 30-some point victory against Bellarmine. Not as positive news in the college football playoff rankings. I was
hoping you touched on that.
That remains a disgrace. Just look at who has beaten who. Look at the fact that Oregon is allegedly the best one-loss team in the country, and Washington defeated them. But that's all I'll say on that. But Hunter, how's it going?
Going well, yeah. Big win for the Huskies last night. Vegas didn't believe, only 10.5-point favorite, so dropping 91 on Bellarmine. Feels great. Feels great to cover easily. Feels great to be 1-0, winning and against the spread on my dogs.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, to kick it off, this wouldn't necessarily have been the plan probably yesterday, and especially not the plan for me, as I was speaking very highly of Michigan State on the podcast yesterday. James Madison goes into East Lansing, gets off to a strong start, had about a 15-point lead in the first half, loses it midway through the second half of kind of the Tyson Walker show for Michigan State to take the lead there, and looked like they kind of had things wrapped up, but James Madison refuses to go away. The first big mid-major upset of the season, and a big one in the sense that it was going back almost decades for Michigan State, and especially Tom Izzo losing a home game in November. Matt, the first, like I said, big mid-major result of the season. I think I saw you tweeted you weren't too high on Michigan State going into the season. So maybe comment there, and then also just any background or things maybe that people didn't know about James Madison that maybe wasn't as surprising of a win as it would seem from the outside.
Yeah, so I was tasked to come up with a preseason top 25, and I left Michigan State out of it. And I wasn't high on them, but I didn't think it was as crazy as everyone else thought. And then when I saw them number 4 in the preseason poll, like when it actually came out, I was like, am I like wrong here? Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but I was like, quick little victory lap. They lost to JMU, but JMU is a solid Fun Belt team. They lost a lot of production from last year. Their top 3 scorers are gone, but they proved to still be a contender in the mid-major levels, and they are a team who is always frisky, at least the last 2 years, across sports. They're just a great school. So no one thought they were going to beat Michigan State last night. I didn't think that. No one did, but very impressive win from the Dukes. I truly do think it has to show more about Michigan State than it does about JMU, though.
Yeah, and I've got a couple thoughts on that, but Hunter, I don't know if you caught any of the game, but in general, thoughts of what took place last night up there at Michigan State.
Unlike Matt, I was high on Michigan State. I was right there with you. It's just not a game you see Izzo lose in November. So really just shocked. And, even Tyson Walker goes out, drops 35. That's not enough. Free throws let him down. Some poor decisions let him down. But really, I mean, that's a bad loss for any Power 5 team, let alone a team that's ranked in the AP top 10. So, yeah, truly shocking. And I'd like to see the committee put it on Michigan State and drop them quite a bit, but we'll have to see what they do if they keep them high and give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it looked like, they did start number 4 in the preseason polls. KenPom has them down at 24 after that loss, probably a reasonable spot for them. But with that being said, with how Michigan State schedules early in the season, and honestly kind of how they played a lot of these guys last year, as we talked about yesterday, ultimately making that run to the Sweet 16 and losing in overtime to Kansas State. Very volatile roster. They kind of get hot, get cold. They're going to play Duke next week. They're going to play Arizona. Baylor. So Michigan State will have chances. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me for them to pick up one of those wins. I'll definitely be watching from at least a spread perspective to see if there's maybe an overreaction in some of those big games, because the talent's there. And I think there will be games this season where they do kind of pop and play to that level, at least in my opinion. Matt, what do you think about that?
Yeah, they always grind it out, and even last year they started off fairly slow. Izzo has that aura around him where he gets it together in March. Just look at the Rothstein tweets: January, February, Izzo, April. He tweets it out every game that they win. So I wouldn't be too worried if I was a Michigan State fan. The Big Ten isn't as elite as it has been the past few years. They have a decent amount of roster turnover. But like I said, I'm not that high on them this year. But you always got to watch out for them come the season. Like you said, they have opportunities. Definitely interesting to see what happens the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And I think kind of transitioning into the mid-major aspect of this, just looking at KenPom and where he has the Sun Belt ranked amongst all conferences in the country, 14th in the country out of 32 conferences. So the Sun Belt expected to be a relatively competitive conference. Is that a conference you've looked at closely, Matt, or any thoughts about the Sun Belt in general now that James Madison?
Yeah, it's definitely a competitive conference in the Sun Belt. There's some teams in that conference that can, I wouldn't say that can beat mid-major teams. I mean, high major teams, but there's teams that could definitely compete. So JMU is probably the favorite in that conference, and they showed it last night. But there's other teams that can do it. Marshall's going to be solid again. App State's going to be solid again. Returned a lot of guys, and then Old Dominion's also going to be okay. I would say JMU would be my pick to win the Sun Belt, but I have to go with a 2. It's going to be probably Marshall. We saw Marshall play, I think it was Queens last night. Queens is a transfer from the D2 ranks, but they were really solid last year. I wouldn't say really solid. They were good, and they absolutely torched them. So I think the Sun Belt's going to be fun, and we saw the Sun Belt #1 team go out and win in East Lansing. So maybe 14 is too low in the KenPom rankings. I think the Sun Belt will be fun. It's uber competitive too. A lot of the teams can beat a lot of the teams. Last night I bet on Georgia State +7.5 versus Belmont, and they lost by 2. Kind of surprised by that line. I don't think they should have been that low of underdogs, but fun conference, very competitive.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it kind of on a team-by-team basis, to your point about it being highly competitive, with that win, James Madison goes up to 101st in KenPom, but then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams between 100 and 200 in KenPom just in the Sun Belt. So definitely something you expect to be competitive. And just from a betting perspective, seemingly a conference that should be fun to bet this year with all of those teams so tightly packed. Moving back up the rankings, I guess, to a conference that I've been looking forward to talk about just because I've seen a lot of hype for a few teams in the conference and I admittedly haven't looked into it close enough to maybe understand it. But let's talk about the Mountain West Conference, which KenPom has as the 7th strongest conference in the country. So arguably the best mid-major conference, if you want to look at it that way. San Diego State, obviously coming off a trip to the national championship. We'll start there. They 25th in KenPom, don't have the odds for the Mountain West Conference in front of me, but maybe Hunter, start with you. Just thoughts about San Diego State and what they bring back this year and how they stack up against a conference that also has New Mexico, which is one of those teams that I've seen a lot of the hype about.
Yeah, San Diego State coming back off that finals run. Got to give credit where it's due. It seems like a team that's been consistently playing that hard-nosed defensive brand of basketball, making it in the tournament year after year, and finally it pays off for them. They make it all the way to the championship. Definitely think they're the favorites coming back in the Mountain West this year. I mean, any team that makes it to the tournament and returns players, you gotta believe in them. I think KenPom ranking them 25. That just goes to show even though they're a mid-major, the Mountain West has been solid for years now. And being a Pac-12 fan, to be honest with you, if you put the Pac-12 and the Mountain West head to head in a showdown, I'm not sure the Pac-12 even comes out on top there. So really impressed by San Diego State. Really impressed by the Mountain West in general. As a West Coast hoops fan, they've got a lot of good teams every year.
Yeah, and I do have the odds pulled up right now. San Diego State +140 to win the Mountain West, New Mexico +400, then Boise State at +500, and then you get into the double digits with UNLV, Colorado State, Utah State, and Nevada between 10-1 and 20-1. Matt, just hearing those odds, and I do want to talk New Mexico a little bit more specifically. But first, just at a high level, hearing those odds, thoughts about how things are stacking up in the Mountain West.
What book was that odds on? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, DraftKings.
DraftKings, yeah, I feel like that's pretty straightforward. You can't count out San Diego State after what they did last season. They lose Matt Bradley, who was one of their do-it-all guys, can score from anywhere on the court, and they lose one of their best defenders. But they bring back their two starting guards in Darian Trammell and what's the other guy's name that they bring back? Lamont Butler. They bring him back, but they're going to lose a little bit of that defensive prowess with Mensah leaving. So that's going to be, I think, a key factor. They're not going to make it back to the national championship game. They were kind of not a popular pick, but they were a popular long shot. Like if you were going to pick a long shot last year, San Diego State made sense, like on the outside looking in. Like I said, I smirked when you mentioned New Mexico. New Mexico is my team to be in the Mountain West this year. I bet them last year at 40-1, and now you see it, they're plus 400. So what Pitino has done in that program is awesome. They bring back House and Mashburn, who are some of the most electric guards in the country. Literally one of the best backcourts in the entire country, and they can run with anyone. There's a lot going on with that team. They also bring in Jamarl Baker. Sorry, I'm literally sick. They bring in Jamarl Baker.
I was sick last week, so it's going around. No,
they bring in Jamarl Baker from Fresno State, who is Fresno State's best player. So that 1-2-3 backcourt is going to be truthfully one of the best in the country, and that's at the mid-major level. So if you're not aware of Pitino and New Mexico State yet, look out. And the odds are kind of showing that. They're 4-1 to win this division, down from a long shot last year. So New Mexico State are my guys this year.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things come to mind there. First, just to follow up on your point about what New Mexico has done in recent years. Last year, 24th in the country, playing a very up-tempo offensively, 24th in the country offensively, playing a very up-tempo style of play. And then obviously it sounds like adding additional guard play will only enhance that. But what actually comes to mind is we kind of touched on San Diego State. Now you're talking about New Mexico as a team that you're high on. And last year, of course, we saw San Diego State go to the Final Four. We saw FAU go to the Final Four, both teams with great guard play. I guess as a fan of mid-major basketball, a fan of college basketball in general, as you look at a team, and maybe you could even look back to last year and what you thought as the season went on, did you see that type of run coming from those type of teams? And then going into this year, is there something that maybe people should be on the lookout as the season goes on for who those teams might be come later in the season?
Well, you said it best. Last year was one of the most open Final Fours, as opposed to generally it's fairly chalky. And that was a great point you made. And it was out of nowhere. I was fading FAU and losing every single stage of the tournament last year. I wasn't even high on them in conference last year, but what they did as a team, I guess the team beats the talent 9 times out of 10. And because if you look at the names on the roster, the output, it's not amazing from FAU, but they just were well coached and they did all the right things when it mattered and got some lucky breaks. Obviously, they probably should have lost that Memphis game in their initial game, and then who knows, the whole world could have changed if they would have lost that game. But FAU obviously did it, and they returned nearly everyone. But back to your original question, I'm not sure if any of these mid-major teams have that prowess, but I like New Mexico's electricity. They have a volatile style team where they could either do win it all or lose to a shitty team. I love that. That's my big thing with Alabama too. Just all or nothing. And you get that with New Mexico. So they're definitely a team to look out for and can definitely make the tournament and have a little run. So yeah, I think they could do something.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And yeah, in general, Mountain West staying up late on the East Coast. There'll be some good Mountain West basketball this year, so keep your eyes peeled there. And I will agree with Hunter that as a Pac-12 fan, you line up those two conferences historically over the last few years, would not be overly confident in the Pac-12. With that being said, a good start of the season for the Pac-12 last night. Probably two of the marquee games for what it was worth were in Vegas yesterday. The Pac-12, USC and Oregon winning those comfortably. So maybe things are.
Who was your guys' least favorite Pac-12 team? Who do you want to lose the most?
Oregon.
Okay.
Oregon. Yeah, I think we speak for Washington fans in general when it's I largely root for Wazoo most of the time. If we're not playing them, Oregon for the large part, I will root against entirely. But we should that's a perfect transition because we talked about it yesterday. The team I actually root hardest against in the country in any sport is Gonzaga. Hunter and I talked about Gonzaga a little bit yesterday. We also said we do respect what they're doing there, but I can't stand Gonzaga. Talking a little WCC, maybe Hunter, I know you touched on Gonzaga yesterday. You were kind of bullish on them, felt like maybe they're going a little under the radar. Maybe remind Matt or the listeners some high-level thoughts on Gonzaga, and maybe just in general your thoughts on the WCC, where Gonzaga is just a slight favorite over St. Mary's after usually being a pretty heavy favorite there.
Yeah, I think not a lot of people are talking about Gonzaga the way they normally do this year. I think they lose Timmy, and people are really concerned with that. But you look at what they did in the transfer portal. They bring in Ryan Nemhard from Creighton, one of the best guards in the portal. They bring in Graham Ike, a guy I'm high on from Wyoming. I mean, this guy's a walking double-double. He's a freak athletically. They get him. And then you look at their returners. They bring back Anton Watson. They bring back Nolan Hickman. They bring back Ben Gregg. They go out and get Steele Venters, a sharpshooter, Big Sky Player of the Year last year. They have a lot of pieces, and then, of course, they're hitting the international recruiting as well. I think there's great value on betting them this year in the WCC, given the deflated odds. I know people are high on St. Mary's, but you got to give me Gonzaga every single year in the WCC until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and maybe, Matt, you can touch a little bit more on the roster construction or differences in the St. Mary's squad this year versus last year, and Gonzaga as well, but just looking at those games last year between St. Mary's and Gonzaga. St. Mary's does beat Gonzaga the first time they played, but then ultimately Gonzaga kind of comfortably beat St. Mary's in the last game of the season, and then also in the West Coast Conference tournament. So, matching up late in the season last year, Gonzaga still seemingly comfortably ahead of Gonzaga or ahead of St. Mary's. But Matt, what are your thoughts about the top of the WCC in 2023-2024?
Yeah, this is one of the first years where Gonzaga is not like a minus 300 favorite to win the conference, and it's very fair because I would say St. Mary's probably got better. I know they lost Logan Johnson, but Aiden Mahaney is one of the best mid-major players in the country. And Gonzaga is kind of always looked at like a mid-major, but like not really a mid-major because they're just so elite every single year. But I would say the roster probably got worse. EK is huge because going from Timmy to Ben Gregg, who was the backup last year, was just like a massive night and day difference. And EK was 2 years ago was one of the best centers in the country, and then he dealt with an injury that kind of had him out all year. So he looked good last night. Interested to see how he comes out this season because you never know what happens with an injury. But I don't know. I would probably have to go with St. Mary just because of the roster turnover is so different. I would say Gonzaga has the more talented roster and a higher ceiling, but Randy Bennett at St. Mary's has been doing it for like 20-something years, and they're always just so consistent with no matter who's on the roster. And having a player like Mahaney is something that they're not necessarily used to having, like one of the best players in the country, literally just a bucket getter from anywhere on the court. And I think he is the best player in the WCC and will be the difference this year for St. Mary's.
Yeah, and being a West Coast, Hunter and I being West Coast basketball fans most of our life, and Washington fans, Randy Bennett's been someone on Washington's radar seemingly forever, even under the last few years of Lorenzo Romar, and then obviously the Mike Hopkins era hasn't been the greatest. Randy Bennett's always been someone who is a Washington fan. Like, if he can do what he's doing down there at St. Mary's, imagine what he could do with the additional resources at Washington. Hasn't happened yet, but I wouldn't completely cross that off as a possibility going forward. And not to put you on the spot here, Matt, but we do this Thursday have a matchup between your New Mexico squad and the St. Mary's Gales, who you just spoke highly of here Thursday. Looks like that is at St. Mary's. KenPom,
noted New Mexico fan, Matt Gannon. Everyone knows that.
We've got you. You invented New Mexico. Anything New Mexico does this year was invented by Matt Gannon. And if it doesn't go well for New Mexico, that's fine. We'll pretend nothing happened. But KenPom with looking like he has St. Mary's as like a 4-point favorite at home against New Mexico. What would you maybe make that one?
I feel like that's very fair. KenPom knows what he's doing. If it's at St. Mary's, I feel like that makes a lot of sense. Place is small, but place rocks. Also, the guards from New Mexico started the season a tad hurt. They played, but I mean, factor that into the equation. That's going to be a appointment television for me. I'd probably lean UNM like plus the 4, but I think it's going to come down to the wire. It'll probably come down to the wire with a Jalen House like chuck 3 that just airballs or something like that, because that's the volatility you want, though. They'll make that shot half the time. So it'll come down to the
And
wire.
this is why I wanted to have you on to talk mid-major basketball, because I was earlier this week kind of looking through the early week of the season. Even yesterday, we were talking, we're like, oh, there's no good games really till Friday. But now, mark your calendars on Thursday. We've got two of the top mid-major teams in the country in an early season battle that will have implications probably come seeding in March. So
It's the best. High level mid-major basketball is my favorite stuff.
And on that topic, in the high level mid majors, we go to the conference that does feature FAU. They're moving up, right? They're coming to the ACC. They were not in the ACC last year, correct?
The AAC, yes.
AAC, yeah. AAC, yes, the American Athletic Conference. The odds in the American Athletic Conference: Florida Atlantic at +110. Memphis at +170, and then a pretty steep drop off to Tulane and Wichita State. I've always been a Wichita State fan, back to the Greg Marshall days, so kind of sad to see them having dropped off to be 20-1 in the AAC. But I'll go to, I guess, Hunter, you first. Florida Atlantic brings back, as far as I know, a solid chunk of the players that were on the roster last year. I was there, as I said yesterday, at that Sweet 16 game between FAU and Tennessee. And just watching Dusty May, I hadn't really thought much about FAU or Dusty May at all before going and watching that game in person. Just one of those things that makes it cool, going to and watching games in person. You just saw the impact that Dusty May had on the sideline, just the influence he had on that game. And they struggled early, but the capital level had just stayed steady and obviously made that run to so close to the national championship, losing on that pull-up jumper to San Diego State. So they bring back a good chunk of the team. And honestly, for me, what's more important is they bring back Dusty May, who I think is an excellent coach and one of the upcoming coaches in the country.
He could have easily left. Yeah, like you said,
yeah.
He could have easily left.
Yeah, he could easily have left. And I think that's, for me, I'll just, kick it off by saying that's exciting for me. If he was willing to come back, they've got this crew. Like, I get that it's going to be very tough to repeat what they did last year. I have confidence in them. Hunter, what are your thoughts on FAU this year?
Yeah, I think Dusty May and this team coming back really speaks to NIL and the parity we're going to start seeing college basketball, because I think a year or two ago, you'd have expected all the top players to transfer and Dusty May to go take a high major job. But the fact that Dusty May comes back and he's able to bring the core back, I think just speaks to the parity that we're going to see in college basketball, because they got some NIL money down there at Florida Atlantic, and they're able to bring these guys back. They're the odds-on favorite in the AAC. It's totally valid. What are they in KenPom? Top 20?
He's got them 36 to
36.
The year, yeah.
So I guess KenPom lower on them, but they're going to be one of those teams. They're going to be higher in the AP than KenPom. There's going to be a lot of media following them, a lot of buzz following them. It's all valid. It's a fun story. I think anyone trying to rain on this parade, that's annoying. Like, anytime you got a mid-major coming back, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Matt, thoughts about that?
Yeah, like you said, like everything you said, they bring back a lot of guys, but I'm jumping up in the conference. Going to play a lot more higher power, more talented teams. They had to deal with UAB last year, and North Texas were the only teams that they really had to deal with. And I live 10 minutes from FAU's campus. You would never know that they have such a high level basketball program. There's zero fan base. I guess there's students, but that is a real thing in college basketball, and that could drive a team to the top. But like I said, I don't love the roster. Dusty May is huge, but going into this conference, I think Memphis is the team to beat, and dealing with them twice a year, dealing with some of these other Tulane solid. They have to deal with North Texas again. I know they have a lot of roster turnover, but still, I like betting on FAU if they're like a dog. I don't love them as a conference favorite in like a much higher conference. So I'm going to take a back seat to the Owls this year. Maybe fade them at first, let the market adjust, and then hope maybe beat it. We'll see. I'll definitely go out on a limb and try that. And if I get beat, I get beat. But I'm going to definitely fade the Owls out the gates.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting perspective, talking more on just the betting level, less about like what we think about FAU or what the story means. Just like, to your point, you believe that there's some hype for FAU. They're going to be known nationally, that, people are going to be watching games. They're going to remember what FAU did last year. Could have some impact on some spreads early in the season. And you're saying think there might be some opportunity there. So I like that perspective. And FAU will be here in New York again, coming back to MSG, where they made that Elite Eight and then Final Four run to play Illinois on December 5th. Okay. So I will be in attendance there to get a second set of eyes, or a second time getting eyes on FAU. And keep note, I'll bring it up before that game, but they did go to the Final Four last time I saw them in person. So we may have to get some money down on FAU.
Noted
there against
FAU
Illinois.
fan,
Yeah,
Adam.
it's some are saying that without me there, FAU does not go to the Final Four. But what can I say? And I guess just touching on Memphis, because just looking at KenPom, he has Memphis at 34, FAU at 36, and then kind of a 50 team drop off to North Texas, SMU, UAB, among others. Matt, what is going on down there at Memphis for Penny Hardaway? I think he's made the tournament the last couple of seasons, but has not done much. Yeah, that's a second round loss and a first round loss for Penny Hardaway in the tournament, one of those being to FAU, as we just talked about a few minutes ago. So that'll be exciting to see them play in conference. But what does Penny Hardaway have down there at Memphis this year? And is this a chance for him to make it to the second week of a NCAA tournament?
Yeah, Penny Hardaway, I feel like has the roster that he wants. This is an absolute melting pot of talent that just landed in Memphis, and he's had that. But I think this one has more potential because it's a lot more higher level player. I mean, older players versus like freshman or sophomore that he kind of got turnover. Javon Quinerly coming from Alabama, I think he's a pass first point guard who can score, and he fits into that style of offense versus where at Alabama, they were asking him to shoot a bit more than he probably is capable of. And the rest of the roster is just a bunch of talent. And like I said, older talent. I think they will – I love when guys transfer, but when they're sophomores or freshmen, it takes a while. I think this team has what it takes, and obviously as a coach who's been around the block, knows what he's doing, I think this team literally has Elite Eight upside, and they don't get DeAndre Williams. He's 27 years old and was putting in for like his 7th year of eligibility. He got denied last week. So that's going to be a loss because he's like almost a 7-footer and obviously knows what he's doing. He's like 30 years old. Rightfully so. He's not playing college basketball anymore. But yeah, Memphis, I think, is the team to beat in this conference.
All right. Excellent. They just looking at their non-conference schedule, they'll play Missouri this Friday, actually, which should be an interesting game. That's away at Missouri. An interesting early season test for.
What's KenPom line on that? I would say Memphis -1.
Close. He's going Missouri -1, but they are home in that game. So yeah, you're in the ballpark of a coin flip matchup there. And then they'll also play Michigan, Mississippi, Texas A&M, Clemson, Virginia. So Memphis playing not maybe any of the very top teams in the non-conference, but going to get a good amount of tests from some of those teams just a step below. All right, so we've talked Mountain West, we've talked AAC, we've talked WCC. The next conference, we've had one of their staff on the show earlier if you go to our Instagram, Vince Eric, you'll see some clips there. The Dayton Flyers, who are the favorites in the A10 conference. Let's see if we can find some odds on that. Not easily, so we will not know what they are. But KenPom with Dayton at number 68 in the country, Loyola Chicago 74, St. Bonaventure, the Bonnies at number 80, and Duquesne at 92. Those are, for KenPom, the top 4 teams in the A10. I know, Hunter, you talked to Dayton a few days ago. Maybe have some thoughts there on what the Flyers will be doing in 2023.
Yeah, Dayton coming in as the odds-on favorite. Got 370 of the 400 points in the coaches' poll. Bringing back a lot of talent. They got Deron Holmes, a double-double machine, also averaged. So he went 18-8 last year, 2 blocks a game. They got Malachi Smith coming back, coming off injury, but a guy that had 3-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. And then Anthony Grant, he's just built a program there. Every game sold out. Those fans love Dayton Flyers basketball. It's going to be an exciting year for them, and they're really looking to carry the torch for the A10. The A10's been down a little in recent years. You know, you used to seeing even back to Shaka's VCU teams making those deep runs in March. Hasn't been the case, but definitely Dayton looking to make a push for the second weekend at least in March Madness.
Yeah, and kind of to that point, as I was looking at the A10 here, just thinking that, you used to see some of these teams maybe a little bit higher up in the rankings or a little bit more competitive throughout the year. Obviously, we're not that far removed from Loyola Chicago's success, but they've dropped off a little bit since then. Matt, at the top of the A10, like I listed those 4 teams, but in general, just thoughts on the A10 maybe overall, and it seems like it has dropped off a little bit, but do you see any opportunity for it to improve this year?
Yeah, definitely. I like what St. Joe's is doing with their roster. They literally return damn near everyone. 3 out of the 5 players average in double figures, and then they bring on a 7-foot freshman. So that's just a great roster construction from St. Joe's. Do they have the talent to compete with Dayton? Probably not. Dayton is the rightful conference favorite, and like you said, Hunter Holmes is a stud and is the best player in this conference, can take over games. But I really like what you said about their fan base, and kind of goes off what I said about FAU. Dayton is a team that has a super strong fan base, and everyone knows it. Like that COVID year, Dayton would have been a 1 seed, and they had a crazy fan base around them to bring them to the tournament, bring them to the Final Four. And they're not going to do that this year, but that fan base is real, and it will bake into their success this year. So I think Dayton is the rightful favorite. I think St. Joe's can make some noise, and I also think Davidson. What is their odds? Because they had hope last year, and they just shit the bed completely. They bring on a decent amount of guys back, and they lose Foster Lawyer, who was their leading scorer, but he was kind of, that might be some like addition by subtraction. He was kind of a dribble everything out and take some shots he shouldn't have. And they're a team that just passes the ball correctly, hits all the right shots. And McKillop in his second season, he comes from a great tree of coaching. I think Davidson could get back to their winning ways. So what is their odds if you have them?
Yeah, they are 25-1 with our friends at Bet Rivers.
Our friends at Bet Rivers know what they're doing. So
yeah, I was going to say they're 14-1 on FanDuel, but I don't know if I want to go head to head with Bet Rivers there at 25-1.
Okay,
but yeah, I've got the odds now actually in front of me, and actually, if you guys are as high on Dayton as it sounds like you are, you can get them at plus 300 on Caesars to win the A10. Next, you got VCU, St. Bonaventure, and Duquesne, all kind of 4-1 up to 9-1. But it sounds like, in your guys' opinion, that 3-1 might be kind of juicy on Dayton.
Yeah, I like it at 3-1, especially when you look at the other teams in the conference. I just think what Dayton has, what they're bringing back, and then again that home court advantage. I think 3-1 is pretty good value there.
Yeah, for sure. And moving on to kind of look at it more on like a team basis, now that we've kind of touched on, I guess, the next couple of conferences, Conference USA, Missouri Valley. Anything exciting worth talking about there, Matt? Or should we talk more about a team like, looks like Yale out of the Ivy is the next kind of highest ranked mid-major, at least in KenPom at 71.
We can go to the Ivy, talk about it a little bit. Yale, you kind of know what you're getting. They're going to make shots from the outside. They return a lot of guys. They lose EJ Jarvis, but the rest of the roster is there. And I honestly forget what their coach's name is, but he's been there for like a million years and runs the same style of basketball.
Yeah, James Jones there at Yale in his, holy smokes. Yeah, he's been the coach since 2000 at Yale.
Okay, yeah. So he's been there for a while.
He's made it to 4. Wow, this is crazy, actually. Started at Yale in 2000. Did not make the tournament until 2016. They made it to the second round as a 12 seed. Lost in the first round as a 14 in 2019. Would have been a 12 seed in the COVID year. And then lost in the first round in 2022. So a long stretch of nothing. And now all of a sudden, Yale, the class of the Ivy.
You guys remember? You guys remember when Yale upset Baylor in the tournament, and we got that famous interview about the rebounds?
So good.
They got more. They got more of these than we did.
Yeah. Yeah, Yale's definitely the class of the Ivy, and Princeton has been giving them fits. I guess the only team that really has, but they lose some production, and I don't think they have the roster construction to run that Princeton motion like they usually do. Yale is the clear favorite in the Ivy, and I think they'll get back to the tournament because they just so consistent, do it every year.
Yeah, Princeton, they did beat Rutgers last night. Not that I think Rutgers is supposed to be anything special, but an exciting moment over there in New Jersey for Princeton knocking off Rutgers. And yeah, just looking at where KenPom has it, Yale 71, Princeton 98, and then you've got Cornell at 132. Always fun to watch Cornell, always getting up and down the court with one of the fastest tempos in the country. So be on the lookout for some overs maybe when Cornell runs up against some high major elite teams here in the non-conference. Yale actually, let's see here. What day is this on? Friday, they're headed up to Gonzaga to play Gonzaga. KenPom has it at Gonzaga by 14.
The total is going to be 154.5. We're gonna bet the over. Does it say the total on there or no?
That, my friends, is why we bring Matt Gannon onto the podcast. Ken Palm with the over-under at 154.
Sharp.
Clip it, Hunter. Get that ready for if. And you're saying you're taking the over on it?
Yeah. Wait, is it actually 154?
Yeah, he has it as 84 to 70.
I know ball. Oh, okay. Let's fucking go. We're taking the over. Yes.
All right, clip this. We'll need to have this ready, depending on what. We're only posting if good things happen, but just the fact that you're coming out second game of the season. Yale's only played Vassar. They haven't even played a Division I opponent. We're already nailing what the over unders are going to be. So
that was one of the most impressive things I've ever done in my life. I cannot lie.
And the fact it's been captured live and on camera, that will live forever. Man, I don't even know what to say right now after that. We should just list off some games and test you on what the over unders are going to be going forward.
I'll play that game.
Well, that might have to be a recurring segment.
I was close with the Memphis spread too, so
yeah, we might have to get that going the rest of the season. All right, I'm scrolling through. I'm looking for good mid majors. I found one not far from Yale. It actually is in Conference USA, who I skipped over a few minutes ago. We'll go to Conference USA. Who am I talking about is the best team in Conference USA, number 75 in Ken Palm?
Liberty Flames?
The Liberty Flames.
Yeah.
What's going on at Liberty this year?
Very similar to Yale, a very straightforward style of basketball, pass and shoot. Richie McKay is the coach's name. He's been there for a while, and no matter what roster turnover they have, they win. And they are up in class. They come up from lower conference into the CUSA this year, so they're going to be dealing with higher level basketball. They lose Darius McGee. Darius McGee is a guy who do it all like Steph Curry, but in college. Just shoot from literally half court and just drain everything. He's been there forever, and he's sadly gone. So replacing him is going to be a tall task, and with that, going into a higher level of basketball, I think it's going to be tougher for them. But the teams below them lost a sustainable amount. So if this was last year, I think it would be a much different story. Liberty, I don't think would fare well. Liberty will still fare well in this conference, but there's some teams who will. Louisiana Tech, Middle Tennessee, WKU lost a lot, but they're usually damn solid. So it's going to be interesting to see how Liberty fares in this conference. I'm not going to take any stand saying Liberty's going to win or Liberty's going to lose, because I was low on them last year, and they're from the ASUN. I was low on them last year in the ASUN, and they still took care of business super easily. They just score at such a high rate. So Liberty, you know what you're getting, but I'm going to wait and see on them.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about the scoring, under Richie McKay, 11th last year in effective field goal percentage in the whole country. The year before, 16th. In 2021, as a 13 seed, they were the third most efficient offense in the country. So just playing excellent basketball from an offensive standpoint, and the defensively, not too bad either. They do a nice job on the glass. This is my first time really looking at Conference USA, but I'm going to speak confidently about Liberty in the limited information that I've seen. I don't see anybody here in Conference USA who seems likely to dethrone Liberty in their first year coming up to the conference.
I agree.
Hunter, I'm just looking at the notes on some teams, making sure Drake's a team that you listed here, and that's perfect because the next conference on the list here is the Missouri Valley, a conference that I once went to a game at Northern Iowa in the middle of the winter. So I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the Missouri Valley. And also, I don't know what year this was. It would have been whatever year Wichita State made it to the Final Four. I saw them play in both the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight down in LA when Craig Marshall was there. Shocker Nation was there. They were fired up. So always have had a soft spot for the Missouri Valley, which makes me a little sad because I don't think the Missouri Valley's really popped off of late. Ken Palm has them down here as the 12th best conference in the country. Thoughts on Drake, who's the favorite here, and maybe just any general thoughts about the Missouri Valley Conference, Hunter?
I'll be honest, I don't know too much about the Missouri Valley. I do know, though, that Drake brings back quite a few of their players, and I do know that it looks like they're projected to make the tournament again. Missouri Valley is going to be a one-bid league, so they're going to have to win that conference tournament to make sure they're in. Never want to leave any question marks. I know last year they were close to a 30-win team, and there were still talks that they had to win that conference to get in. But really good basketball team. I think they can put together a good season. I think they could maybe win a game in March, but I don't see them making a deep run.
Yeah, and I guess dropping after that, so it's the top of the conference: Drake, Bradley, Northern Iowa, and then just a hodgepodge. Indiana State. I had no idea that Murray State is in the Missouri in
They
the.
moved from the Ohio Valley.
Yeah. After Ja left, they moved to the MBC.
All right.
Gotcha.
Well, to that then, Matt. Any of these teams outside of Drake capable of giving them a run for their money in the Missouri Valley this year?
Yeah, Drake's gonna be solid. They had the same core for a long time, then they finally left them this year. But Tucker DeVries, coach's son, is the guy. He's literally an NBA guy. He's like a Gordon Hayward type player. That's kind of his perfect comp. And then Darnell Brody, center from Newark. He started his career at Seton Hall, and now he transferred to Drake the last 3 years. Kind of grew into his own body, and he's one of the older guys. I think he's like 24, so he's going to be one of the older players in college basketball, and he could definitely take care of that conference. But Bradley is a team who is always just, even when the roster looks down, they were so injured last year, and they still figured it out. They return a few guys. They lose Rank Mast, who is a 14 points per game scorer, and everything went through him. They're gonna be their best competition. But Missouri State also, they played West Virginia last night. They ended up losing by 8 or something, but they were in it the entire game. They have a guy by the name of Donovan Clay. He is going to be right up with DeVries for Conference Player of the Year. He's a power forward who could dribble the ball, who could score, who could shoot. So watch out for Missouri State. They have a roster that could take care of business. Also, Matthew Lee came in from that St. Peter's team that beat Kentucky. He tore his ACL like the first week of last season, and he didn't play at all. And he immediately made an impact last night versus a talented West Virginia team. So Missouri State and Bradley could definitely give Drake a run for their money in the MVC.
And I'm always also a fan of the MVC because they tend to kick off, or at least on the big networks, once March rolls around,
March
CBS
Madness.
that first Sunday before the kind of bigger conference tournaments kick off, you can get that Missouri Valley final. So we're going to look out for Drake there, and it sounds like they'll have a handful of teams to contend with there. So I guess just looking at these conferences we've talked about, the next one up would be the WAC, which I think certainly is a one bid league. Just starting from the top here, maybe give me a guesstimate on how many bids these leagues are playing for, just so people as they watch these conferences this year might be thinking about. So Mountain West.
They can push 3. They can push 3.
AAC 2. FAU in Memphis.
I'm gonna say 1. I'm gonna take a back seat. I'm gonna take a back seat to FAU. I really think they're gonna be down this year. But no, they're gonna get 2. They'll get 2.
I'll say 2.
WCC, obviously St. Mary's and Gonzaga should be competitive there, and I guess some of these other, San Francisco a couple years ago, but they lost their coach and haven't really been the same, so probably 2 there.
There's the opportunity for 3 though, because if you go out and you get some of those, if you get a win over Gonzaga or St. Mary's, you get to play both of them twice. Whoever rises to the top, I mean, you got your Loyola Marymount, your Santa Clara, your San Francisco. Whoever slots into that 3rd spot, I could see them maybe getting in, especially if they make a deep run in the conference tournament. Yeah,
and I guess that could be a spot where, if Matt's low on the AAC, maybe they get 1 bid, and one of these WCC teams, a Loyola Marymount or a San Francisco picks off 2 wins over St. Mary's and Gonzaga, who largely, run the table elsewhere. I think that's fair. A10.
That's probably a 1 bid. There was a narrative last year that the A10 was going to be a 4 bid league, and it just absolutely cannibalized itself so poorly, and it ended up being, I think, a 1 bid league or something crazy last year, maybe 2. But A10 is going to be down this year, but I don't know, because it was supposed to be so good last year, and then it was so bad. Now it's supposed to be so bad. We'll see. So I'll say 2. I'll just middle it out with 2.
I'll say it's 1 if Dayton wins the conference tournament, and it's 2 because I think Dayton could get in as an at-large if they win their conference in the regular season.
All right. I like that. And VCU obviously losing to our boys at McNeese, so that's 0-1 for them, but it looks like everybody else largely took care of business in the A10. And
I'm hearing there's no odds on McNeese to win the national championship. Thoughts there?
Yeah, no, pretty disrespectful. I should have done this actually before the VCU game, because theoretically the odds would have been even longer. due to our friendship with McNeese and the rooting we're having for them this year, I did want to place a wager on McNeese to win the national championship. DraftKings unable to provide that for me. So if anybody else out there has access to a McNeese State future to win the national championship, please send it my way.
They've got the guys to do it. If FAU could do it last year, McNeese could get there. I swear, they got the guys.
The level of excitement I would have if McNeese is legit is so they seem to be, and as you've told me they are, I can barely even contain my excitement about it. They're playing. Hunter's going down there. He's actually going to be going to 3 games this week, but unfortunately they're all non-Division I opponents. But hopefully a chance to see the boys out there running and gunning and just laying the hammer down.
Yep. I mean, that's my team this year.
That is a team to watch. We'll be following McNeese closely. You'll hear more about McNeese on this podcast than you'll probably hear anywhere else in the country. And I think that because then after the Missouri or after the A10, it goes Conference USA, Missouri Valley, WAC, Sun Belt, Ivy, Big West, Southern. We're talking about 1 bid leagues there, right?
Yeah, all for sure.
All the way down.
And so with that, any other teams, Matt, that you are excited about that we should maybe not, to be competitive in March but just teams that they'll be on ESPN Plus, probably great place to bet and watch college basketball. Any teams we should have our eyes out and maybe some maybe sleepers or people that might present some value in the odds this year?
Yeah, we didn't talk about this conference, but I think Grand Canyon can turn some heads and win a game in March. They have a great coach, and they bring back a decent amount. Bryce Drew, the brother of the Baylor coach. Javon Blackshear returns, and Rayshawn Harrison returns. They're the 2 point guards like New Mexico. Very high ceiling, very low floor, but that's kind of what you want. And they bring on some other transfers from Oregon and Louisville and DePaul. Talented roster, the WAC favorites, and I think they can definitely turn some heads and win a game in March.
So I'm glad you brought up Grand Canyon because they were actually, when I was looking at the conferences, they were the next one I was going to bring up. But then I was like, I don't know if we need to talk about Grand Canyon. But my sister recently graduated from Grand Canyon, so I have kept tabs on Grand Canyon a little bit over the last year. And a guy, maybe you mentioned it, maybe you didn't, one of the ultimate volume offensive players and shooters, maybe in the whole country, Ray Harrison. If you get a chance to watch Ray play this year, just looking at his percentage of shots, this guy started at Presbyterian, taking the 33rd most shots in the country as a percentage of his team's shots. Stays there for a year. Next year, he's taking 46% of the shots at Presbyterian. And then he moves to Grand Canyon and says, I'm going to take the shots here too. Takes 74th in the country for percentage of shots. If you make it, take him if you're going to make them. But I like Grand Canyon, and they've got and what's actually, in all seriousness, the fact that they're letting him shoot to this volume and they actually play pretty cohesively as a team, and it's like everybody knows their role. I agree with you that Grand Canyon's impressive, and obviously the coaching job there. You would think Bryce Drew won't be there for long, and especially if they make a run this year.
Talk about an environment. I'm sure you've seen a game there.
Yeah.
That is a madhouse.
Yeah, it's
great place to see a game.
Cool. Any additional teams? I'm just looking at the rest of the conferences here. I know you placed a lot of futures, Matt? Was there any futures that you placed in some random conference for any teams?
I honestly did not go crazy this year with the futures. I feel like less is more. I placed 2 high major futures, but I'll probably do some futures come mid-major tournament time.
Beautiful. I was just quickly checking the scores. Oh, Auburn with a 7-point lead on Baylor. Running towards the end of the first half there, 39-32. And we talked about the New Mexico St. Mary's game, and Hunter and I will be talking a little bit later this week to break down what should be an awesome slate on Friday. But Matt, while we've got you just for those games coming up on Friday, we've got Arizona at Duke, Tennessee at Wisconsin, San Diego State at BYU, Texas A&M at Ohio State, Virginia versus Florida. Big day on Friday. Any games that you're exceptionally excited about for this opening week of the season?
I'm definitely excited to see that first game you mentioned, the Arizona and Duke. Arizona turned over a lot in their roster, but we know the talent's there. And then Duke is back on the hype train. They have a lot of guys, and they have some great recruits. And I'm excited to see, I guess you could say they disappointed last year in the tournament. So that would be one of the games I'm looking forward to. Arizona has a point guard. I honestly forget his name. He came to high school college a year early. He has big curly hair. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Boswell. Yeah, he is a scrappy scorer slasher. I want to see him against that Duke lineup. So that's the game I'm looking forward to for sure.
Speaking of guards, just quickly as it came to mind, Hunter, you were very, very high on Collier yesterday on the podcast. I watched probably half of that game. He looked like he's been in college for 3-4 years. Just unbelievable. How did that result against Kansas State boost your thinking about USC team that I believe you have in the Final Four?
Yeah, I said USC to the Final Four. Isaiah Collier's a big piece, if not the piece. It's him and Boogie Ellis in that backcourt. I think they can be a top 4 backcourt in the country, and you need a backcourt come March. They looked great last night. They were 2.5-point favorites. They end up winning by 13, handled their business. I really do think USC is going to be competing for a conference championship and making a deep run this year.
Agreed.
Excellent. Well, that we'll put a wrap on the college basketball portion of the podcast and spend just a few minutes because, like I said, if Matt's on here, I got to get his takes on the golf. I believe coming off of a winner last week. Is that correct?
Yeah, 2 weeks actually. We had the Moronk, and then we had was that 3 weeks ago? Well, we had EVR last week, so yeah, winner last week.
So I think yeah, it was. I mean, there was no DP last week, right? So it would have been. No, it was Qatar the week before. So,
Right.
but either way, coming in with a nice fall swing. What's a quick thought on what's taking place in Bermuda, and then a quick thought on the Ned Bank, where Tommy Fleetwood, in my opinion, would be harming his career if he picks up a third straight victory there.
Always those weeks where yeah. So Bermuda, obviously not the best field, but it's golf. We got golf. I know you and I both bet Brendan Todd at 20-1. Course horse played okay in the swing season. But besides that, I'm kind of go down to Marty Dow, the guy who I'm just banking on a high ceiling with, who showed anything in a field like this. And outside of that, Ryan Moore. I said that earlier. Ryan Moore, course horse, fairway green. He played well at the Wyndham 2 years ago, Bermuda short, and he's trending. So let's do it.
Excellent. And then over at the NetBank, where, like I said, Tommy Fleetwood, for those who aren't following this, a guy who can never close the door in any other tournament. He dominates the NetBank. I actually think he's going to win a third straight NetBank. I think 7-1's a fair enough bet on him. But Max Homa and Justin Thomas actually making appearances over there. Will you be riding any of the PGA Tour players making an appearance down there in South Africa?
Yeah, I do love me some PGA Tour players across the P, but I'm gonna go down the board a little bit. I'm gonna go with the DFC's guys because this is a tournament one in the 12 to 15 under range, very long. If weather is a factor, then it'll be even harder, but I don't think it will be this week. I'm going with Bob Mack, 33-1. He was in the mix at the Qatar event, which we all thought, at least I thought, was going to be played really hard, but it was won at like 18 under or something like that. Either way, he mixed. He was in one of the final groups, and then he had a shitty Sunday. But I think this golf course suits Bobby Mack's game much more than the Qatar golf course did. Playing good golf at the moment, 33-1. I'll go Bob Mack.
I like it. I'm going to be jumping back on. It's been, I think, the whole year. Fox used to be my guy. Some argue I invented him. That's up for debate. But I haven't been able to ride him this year just because he's been on the PGA Tour, and then the odds haven't been great on the DP. But I'm going to go with Ryan Fox off of the second place finish of Tommy last year down there in South Africa.
Gotta love Foxy.
And just to prove that the DP is the place to look quickly, Hunter, I know you'd consider yourself an average golf on a scale of 1 to 10. What's your golf knowledge level?
Above average, but nothing amazing.
So I'm going to list off some names from who are playing in the top players this week in the Butterfield Bermuda Championship, which is the PGA Tour. And you tell me, I know that person or I don't know that person.
All right.
Adam Scott.
Yep.
Thomas Dietrich.
No.
Jerry's favorite player, for what it's worth, Thomas Dietrich. Alex Smalley.
Nope.
Brendan Todd.
Yes.
Oh, you do know Brendan Todd, all right.
Yep.
We got 2 there. Akshay Bhatia. Do you know Akshay?
I do know Akshay, the long lefty.
Yeah. Okay. So we got 3. Lucas Glover.
Yep. I know Glover.
Wow. This is going the opposite way, maybe how I would have expected it to go.
I mean, ever since I started following Vince Derrick's golf.
There you go. That's why, if the PGA Tour is listening, that's why you give discounts. That's why you invest in Vincerix, because somebody who doesn't know the game is learning the game.
And now they know Lucas Glover.
And now they knew Lucas Glover. Those are,
Yep.
I mean, that speaks for itself. So actually, yeah, you know a solid amount of players in Bermuda, but it was let me read off some of the names over at this DP World Tour tournament. Tommy Fleetwood, like we've been talking about.
Yep.
Max Homa.
Yep.
Justin Thomas.
Yep.
Justin Rose.
Alabama, baby. Yep. Justin Rose.
Full Tide.
Actually, it might fall off here because, like, do you know who Brandon Grace is?
Nope.
Aaron Rye.
Did he go to Oregon?
No. You're thinking of Aaron Wise. That's
Aaron
actually
Wise.
you're close, and we'll give you a half point
That's
for that
good.
because that was actually the connection there was pretty solid. Do you know Ryan Fox?
No.
That's a shame. We're gonna have to talk about that after the podcast. We're gonna have to that's a kind
Need
of
a-
a minimum requirement to ever be allowed on the podcast. Even if we're talking basketball, you just have to know Ryan Fox. Like Adrian Moronk,
No.
Jordan
Oh,
Smith.
you better look up Adrian Moron's girlfriend.
Yeah. Adrian Moronk has arguably one of the most attractive girlfriends in the world of sports. So check that out. But yeah, so some big names over at the Bermuda, but it turns out that, yeah, maybe the core of, or big names over the DP, but maybe the core of the PGA this week at Bermuda is exciting. So check that out. I'm trying to remember who I bet. Yeah, I bet Brendan Todd. I'm going with Pendy. I feel terrible about it. It's a horrible, horrible bet to bet Taylor Pendrith at 22-1. Do not do that, but I'm doing it. So that's my don't do what I say. Don't do what I do. Do as I say. Pick there on Pendy. Awesome. Well, yeah, quickly before we go, Hunter and I listed off our Final Four yesterday. Mine off to a bad start with the result from Michigan State, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm not going to back down yet. I know, Matt, you've got some doubts, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to see what happens in some of these random or some of these non-conference games against tough opponents. I think they're going to pick one or two off, and we'll forget this James Madison thing ever happened. But, Matt, what's the Final Four, and who is your national champion as we get the season going here in day 2?
All right, my Final Four is going to be Duke, Tennessee, Arizona, and Ole Miss.
Wow.
Ole Miss. Wow. Chris Beard, year 1.
Yeah, that roster is good.
Hold
My
on.
national championship, Tennessee. National champion, Tennessee.
Wow, just quickly. I just
2
wanna-
SEC teams.
So you're betting Ole Miss at 25-1 to win the SEC?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But Tennessee's going to win, but I'm going to bet Ole Miss.
Let's see if you can get what's Ole Miss to make the Final Four. 35-1 to make the Final Four.
Those are bad odds, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
those are
DraftKings,
bad
so
odds.
we shouldn't be surprised. I'm sure there's
To win the SEC is that 25-1 is a way better bet, in my opinion.
Well, good news on Vincerix. We're going to be getting the odds comparison going here shortly, and you'll be able to find those best odds instantly. Yeah, we'll be back a little bit later this week. Hunter and I talk some more basketball. We'll also hopefully have some of the stuff on the site launched, and excited to kind of walk through some of those tools. Obviously, what we're trying to do here is both have entertaining content, but also really powerful data and tools for you to go and place bets, or even if it's not to place bets, just to follow the game a little bit more intelligently. I know there's sports that I don't even bet that much, but I always just want to know a little bit more about what's driving things when I'm watching it. So, gentlemen, thanks for coming on. Obviously, Hunter will be back this week, and we'll have Matt on here plenty this season. Thanks, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.